car crash cases, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The attorneys with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis Wright and host David Lamb.
Hello and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for spending your Sunday evening with us. Our topic of conversation today, crime victims and lawsuits. Would love to have you be a part of the conversation. You'll see ways on your screen where you can join in. We love getting questions from you. Also, Hollis Wright makes available attorneys each and every Sunday night who are standing by live to have an off-air confidential conversation with you. So if you think of a legal question and you want to get some free legal advice, opportunity tonight to make that happen. Leading our conversation is the managing partner of the firm, Hollis Wright, Josh Wright. Good to see you, Josh.
I love when you introduced me that way. Your intro was fabulous.
Was it? Was it on point?
You did a good job.
I try. We've done a few of these.
We've done a lot of them. Yeah. About 250 of these things.
Wow.
All right. So we're going to tackle a topic tonight that I don't think we've ever done before, which is the civil implications of a person that has been involved or been the victim of a criminal act. So if you have been a crime victim, do you have a civil remedy? Okay. We're going to be talking about that. Two really interesting statistics that come up when we talk about these topics. One is, if you're over 60 years old, 1 in 10 will be subject to some form of abuse or neglect, where they may have a civil cause of action. And over 24 million Americans every year are involved in a crime-related event where they have a civil case or could engage in a civil case. I have one of my dear friends that I've been buddies with for a very long time, Tommy James, on tonight from Tommy James Law. He does a great job. He's an expert in this area, and that's why we bring him on. But he's also an expert in a lot of different areas and does some civil cases and all sorts of other things, and has worked with me and alongside with me for many years. So first of all, glad to have you on. This is actually the first time we've ever had you on the show, right?
It is.
So I talked to Tommy not long ago, and he said, hey man, you know, your show looks really good. I said, it's going to look even better with you on it. So here you are, about 6 weeks later.
I know, I'm the drawing card. I appreciate it.
Oh, there's no question. You do a good job. All right, so talk about this topic, though, because this is not a topic. Number one, it's complicated for lawyers because of the potential defenses in crime victim cases. But how did you get involved in this area of the law? Because it's really kind of a unique specialty.
Yeah, I started practicing about 21 years ago, and about 2 years into my practice, I was working in Montgomery, and we started seeing a lot of cases involving state employees where they were negligent. And all these cases were occurring in like state mental facilities, homes for disabled individuals where they were being abused, neglected by the clients. I mean, they neglected and abused the clients. And oftentimes there would be crimes involved in these. There would be rapes in these types of facilities. There would be assaults causing serious injuries to the victim. There would be all kind of problems in those places. And I thought about it, you know, over the years doing this kind of work, well, they all involve crime victims in some way. And I think kind of after that, all my cases now, probably 90% all do involve victims of crime and their families if somebody is killed.
So great example that every viewer will know about, O.J. Simpson. That's a great example of this area of the law, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's the best way to describe it too, because in the O.J. case, everybody's seen the O.J. case or heard about it. There was a lengthy prosecution, lengthy trial. At the end of that, he was found not guilty of murdering Ron Goldman, Nicole Simpson. Well, the Goldman family, as you may remember, the father was very upset at the whole situation, and he decided to sue O.J. in civil court on behalf of Ron and Nicole. That's what we do. We would come in and file a civil claim for money damages where the standards are a little different in civil cases. And in O.J.'s case, he was found responsible by that jury in the civil case, and they hit him with a verdict of $33.5 million.
Yeah, so we do a lot of dram shop cases, and we talk a lot about dram shop on this show. Dram shop being liability associated with someone that drank too much and caused an injury. And take a typical car accident case, because it's something that we deal with on a daily basis, but it also applies to this. You have somebody who is criminally engaged in conduct, driving a vehicle, causes through a DUI or some other event, some reckless driving, a terrible injury to somebody. They're being criminally prosecuted, and a lot of times that criminal prosecution drives the civil side of the case, which is liability for who overserved that person. So just another example of how the criminal side of the world and the civil side of the world can sometimes meld together and work together and create these civil suits like Tommy's talking about.
And can I just ask, so, and we've covered this some before, but there, you all bring it up, the differences in the, whatever, the bar, the burden of proof in these two cases, so is it less or easier from a civil standpoint?
Well, in criminal, everyone knows from watching Dateline and the police shows that it's beyond a reasonable doubt. And what that means is basically the jury, there's no doubt this guy did it in common layman terms. In a civil case, kind of what we do, even if it's a criminal case that kind of started the trial criminal actions that started what I'm doing, in the civil case, when we're asking for money damages, it is lower. The standard is lower. It's more, was he responsible for, let's say, the death or the rape of this individual? The jury's got to find more likely than not. It's a scale, and it just, if the scale's like this and tips against the defendant, and it says more likely than not he did it, then the jury will hold him responsible.
What are some hurdles you see in these cases where you're taking a defendant who is found criminally responsible and you're trying to prosecute them for a civil wrong? What are some of the hurdles that you see generally in those lawsuits? Because I know it's not simple to say, okay, well, he engaged in that conduct, clearly we can go sue him. Doesn't quite work that way.
Right, it doesn't. I mean, technically, pretty much anybody that's been a victim of a crime would have a case, quote, a case against that perpetrator, but you can't get blood out of a turnip. There's going to be no money involved. There's some issues as to whether his acts would be covered by insurance. So what we do, and this is what clients need to do when they go see a lawyer on any of these cases, is get the lawyer to do a thorough investigation, because there's always, in the cases that we're able to handle, going to be another entity or individual involved that also contributed to the crime occurring, such as the owner of a business didn't do the right background checks, you know, so he'd be brought into it, because that crime would have never happened if he had known that this guy had violence tendencies in the past. He wouldn't have hired him. Same thing with, you know, truckers. You're talking about drunk driving, stuff like that. If a trucker's drunk or high, his company holds responsibility for it. So the fact that he got a DUI in that case, you know, some people, insurance companies would say, well, he's precluded from getting coverage for that act, but we'll get coverage somehow from another entity.
So when I know we're getting ready to go to break, when we come back, I want to unwrap that a little bit more, because as Tommy indicated, a lot of times there are defenses that these criminal defendants may have, but hiring a lawyer to evaluate the case completely may allow you to get to the appropriate parties that can be responsible and held responsible to compensate somebody for the criminal wrong that they engage in. I also want to talk about some example cases, because Tommy's got some example cases that'll knock your socks off that you can't even believe have become civil cases. So when we come back, let's talk about some of that stuff.
We'll step aside right here, our first break of the evening. As we do so, I want to remind you how you can get in touch with us. We'd love to hear from you. Stay tuned. More of The Attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm. Thank you for watching The Attorneys. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple: provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury-related topics, you can call, email, or text us. Or you can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or simply contact us by going to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us watching The Attorneys.
Welcome back into the attorneys. Appreciate you being with us tonight. A reminder before we get back to our conversation with our panel of experts, attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by live right now. So even as we speak right now, attorneys standing by live to speak with you. Just pick up the phone and give them a call. Josh?
All right, so when we went to break, one of the things I wanted to talk with you about is some of the defenses that are used in these cases. One specifically I want to talk about because it really highlights to me the importance of having a guy like you handle the case if somebody's involved in this area of the law, and that's this. Criminal defendants, because of their intentional conduct, oftentimes there is a defense in a lot of these insurance policies where they are not held responsible because the carrier's not going to cover intentional conduct. Is that fair?
That's correct.
How do you work your way through that? Or is it sometimes looking for other defendants? Is it, you know, just kind of litigating your way through it? How do you generally handle that?
Yeah,
because I know that's a tough defense.
And sometimes we don't know initially if there's going to be that other party that we could also sue to hopefully be held accountable for that crime. But what I've found is, for example, if there's a murder case, we're going to have the victim's family involved. We're going to do a full-on investigation, and it could have been, just as one case, the person who fired the gun ended up being, you know, not covered. They denied it an insurance company. So the victims, and with my help, we sued Department of Corrections because there was an escape down at a prison in Montgomery, and the guy should not have been allowed to escape. He was supposed to be in solitary. Mm-hmm. They messed up everything in his plan, and he shouldn't have been out. He got out and murdered. Actually, it was a couple on a farm down in Montgomery County. And so that's just one example, maybe not the best example, but there are always entities, you know, like we were talking about earlier, the drunk driver, you know, hurt somebody. There's an issue there, I know, sometimes on coverage. Yeah. But if for whatever reason he doesn't have coverage, well, you can still go after the bar, like you were talking about Dram Shop earlier, for over-serving him. So this defense of intentional criminal conduct, a lot of times you're looking to third parties that may have also had responsibility and culpability to bring suit against them. Correct, and there generally are those people, unless it's just a random street shooting, you're not going to be able to find anybody to be able to sue for. Talk a little bit about the statute of limitations generally in these civil cases. Are they pretty consistent with the civil cases that we'd see on the negligence side where you got 2 years generally? That's right. That's generally the case, but in some of the sexual abuse cases, there can be what they call an ongoing tort. Yeah. And a lot of times I do have young victims that have been molested, abused in a daycare, or a mentally disabled person in the group home, and the statute for them doesn't run, you know, until they hit the age of majority plus 2 years. Yeah. So sometimes even I'll have an incident from 10 years ago, and this person still has problems. So yes, the 2 years, but I mean, if we can prove, like, if we have a minor, then we've got more time to investigate. But usually we like to file them fast. We like to get things rolling for our clients to get. Well, and a lot of times when you've got an intentional conduct engaged, you know, or somebody engaged in that type of conduct, the insurance carriers don't want to resolve those claims unless they get filed. You almost have to file those and litigate them to convince somebody, hold on, now this person can be held liable and held responsible for it. You know, David, one of the important things that Tommy just mentioned, and I think it has to be underscored again, that's this. People forget, if your child was unfortunately in a circumstance where they were abused or sexually assaulted in some way, whether it be in an environment through some type of DHR custody, whether it be an environment as sad as it is in a church environment or something else, you know, your statute may not be 2 years. Your statute likely is going to be once that child reaches the age of majority, and then 2 years on top of that. We also get a lot of calls from people who are in their 30s
who were sexually assaulted but just could not come forward, and now they've heard this pastor or this individual in this business is being criminally prosecuted and somebody was brave enough to come forward. Do they have a cause of action? Even those cases have to be evaluated because there are some loopholes, some exceptions where the statute can be even longer than a traditional 2-year period. So if people are struggling with this, the best thing to do is pick up the phone and do what?
Right.
Call a lawyer and ask the question. It's not difficult to at least get that question answered to figure out whether or not you've got a potential cause of action. And the last thing I'd say is this, it takes real bravery for someone to come forward a lot of times. And sometimes what you'll see is somebody come forward. I mean, take the Bill Cosby circumstance. Some brave woman decided she was first, gonna be strong enough to do this, and then a whole group come. Now, whether all those claims are credible or not, I'm not here to judge that. What I'm willing to tell you is that's a great example of one brave woman came, and there are other women that were also assaulted that decided, I'm gonna be brave too. So sometimes that happens, but it can take extended periods of years for that to happen.
Kind of a domino. Tell me, in your practice, in your experience, is there a consistency or pattern in terms of where these events take place?
Yeah, there are. I mean, as you know, crime can happen anywhere, anytime, to anyone. But in the successful cases that I've handled, they're usually in certain places, like you said. I mean, they're in daycares, school settings, group homes for mentally disabled people, mental health facilities, schools for troubled teens that are across the state that Department of Youth Services places these kids in there. They're rampant with crimes and rampant with lawsuits if people bring those crimes to the attention of an attorney. Drunk drivers, obviously, that's not a common individual. Sometimes it is, but a lot of drunk driving cases. And I think, I kind of mentioned earlier, Department of Corrections and some jail facilities. I mentioned one where a guy escaped that should have never escaped. Well, they've been known also to let out people, release them, that they had no reason to be released, and they shouldn't have been released, and their policy and procedure said they shouldn't have been released, and then literally the next day or two they'll go out and murder someone.
I know we're getting ready to go to break. When we come back, I want to talk about how businesses, for business owners out there, can be responsible for their acts of their employees. Even if their employees engage in criminal conduct, they can still be responsible under certain circumstances. So we need to talk about that when we come back.
All right. Look forward to it. We'll do that. We'll step aside our final break of the evening. If you want to join our conversation, a few minutes remaining to do so. Stay tuned. More of The Attorneys coming right up.
I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright. As with any industry, it's important in the legal world to hire an attorney that is knowledgeable and has a track record of success. But with so many attorneys out there and so many different types of cases, how does someone decide the right lawyer to hire? In this week's Legal 4-in-1, we're answering the question, what should I consider in hiring an attorney? In-state versus out-of-state, big firm or little firm, recommendations from friends or family, the internet, the phone book, or TV. With so many choices and so much information, it can be an overwhelming task trying to make the right decision. To complicate things, choosing a lawyer is an important and sometimes life-affecting decision and should not be taken lightly. So how do you select an attorney? First, do your research. Look the firm up on the internet. Learn about the cases they handle and the results they get. Second, find out what clients are saying about the firm. Many websites provide client testimonials or have a star ranking system. Use those to your advantage. And finally, talk with a lawyer from their office and ask them questions. Questions about the volume of cases they handle. Do they return phone calls? Are you just a number or a client that gets the attention you deserve? Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys right here on WVTM 13.
Welcome back in to The Attorneys. This is our final segment, less than 10 minutes remaining. So if you want to take advantage of that opportunity to speak with an attorney from Hollis Wright standing by live, again, you have less than 10 minutes to do so. Josh?
All right, so when we went to break, we were talking about businesses and how a business can be responsible for the criminal conduct of their employee. How does that work?
When a business is
where they can be responsible for the criminal conduct of one of their own employees.
Right. That can occur in many situations. One, the workers are required to do certain background checks generally on their employees. And the best example of that is if they don't do something about a guy's drinking history or something like that. They hire an 18-wheel company, the guy goes out and gets in a crash. Because of his bad actions in the crash, they're held responsible to that because they did not do the proper background search. Same thing if that employer of a trucking company did not give good training to truck driver. Truck driver gets in a wreck because of that bad training, they're responsible. Same thing if somebody's doing something bad on the job constantly, he's a dangerous driver, not getting his rest like he's supposed to get it and not following his logs correctly. And they let him stay on board. That's called negligent retention. That's a way too to get them. But oftentimes there's an agency relationship between an employer and the employee, and that will cause it kind of, I don't want to talk about the way we talk about it in law school, but it will hold an employee basically accountable, employer accountable for the employer's bad behavior.
So if you're an employer, be careful, because you can sometimes be held for the criminal conduct of your employees. And not only that, one of the things that Tommy and I learned in law school is even if that employee engages in intentional conduct, assaults somebody, shoots somebody, if the employer through its conduct ratified that behavior by allowing that person to stay on after they were aware of the dangerous propensities, those types of things, the employer can be held directly responsible for the actions if they engage in intentional conduct. But what Tommy's talking about is 100% right. When you talk about negligent hiring, training, and supervision, those are claims where you're holding the employer responsible for negligent conduct even though the employee engaged in criminal conduct. So, there's an interplay there. And it's another good example, David, for why you just don't want to go these cases alone. If you think you've been involved in criminal conduct and you think that you're a victim of criminal conduct, you want to do your best to get with someone like Tommy that can help lead, guide you, and direct you through the process to explain to you, hey, there are options you have, and here are the defendants we need to look at, those types of things.
One of the things you all have been talking about is suing government employees. Is there not an immunity enacted there? And if so, how difficult is that to overcome, if so?
Yeah, the state employees, city employees, county employees, sheriffs, people like that, they do have immunity. State agent immunity, there's all kind of other immunities, but what I deal with often is state agent immunity. Been doing it 20 years. Not many people handle a lot of cases involving suing the state agencies, things like that. And I think just over doing it for 20 years, we've kind of learned most effective ways to get around the immunity. So we have had success with it. It's not easy having that success. It's a lot of work, and it's kind of, it doesn't make a sense to a lot of people, but I've been doing it for so long, there are ways to get around it. So we've had success in that area. If we could,
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, immunity in general I don't agree with, because a nurse at a state hospital, if somebody slips and falls, well, she's immune. But if a nurse at Brookwood or somebody slips and falls, and the janitor there is not going to be, there's no immunity. So there's problems with it.
There have been reasons in the past, and working down at the legislature like I did on the trial lawyer side, there's a reason why we have immunity under certain circumstances. and it is to protect, under certain circumstances, police officers, those folks that are engaging in really dangerous activity, that are going to be surrounded by really dangerous people. We want to protect them and insulate them under certain circumstances that, if they're doing it the right way, that they're immune from suit. The problem is, as Tommy noted, and he's 100% accurate, immunity has now been expanded to so many different industries. And to think that you could have a nurse at a hospital that's a state-run hospital that's immune from suit, yet a nurse at a regular for-profit hospital is not, that engages in the same conduct, is not necessarily immune, just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Right. So a lot of it has gone it come full circle from where it started, and has included in that full circle a whole host of folks that probably shouldn't have been included. Hey, talk to us just in general about some of the cases you're seeing right now, because I know you're heavily involved in this litigation.
Yeah. I'll talk about one that in the past that I've had, and one that's going on right now. There was a case a few years ago back in Montgomery where my client was working on a cleaning crew at a movie theater in East Montgomery, the Rave Theater. The cleaning company that she worked for hired work release inmates, and that's work release inmates, if you may or may not know, they're out there in the white vans, being dropped off at hotels, stuff like that. They do a lot of work throughout the community. But this guy, he got in contact with one of his buddies when he was at the theater, supposed to have been cleaning, and his buddy bought him much cocaine and beer, and he proceeded to ingest all the cocaine and all the beer, and was trying to get the keys from my clients for her vehicle, and she wouldn't give them up, so she dragged him. He dragged her out into the parking lot and assaulted her, got the keys, drug my client up a hill where she ultimately was killed by this individual, and he should never have been on work release. Right. We proved in that case that he'd had 3 felons and other issues. He should have never been on work release, got out on work release, and he killed this lady. And we sued DOC and all the classifications officers, and we had a very, very good result on that one.
Yeah. We could go all day with Tommy's stories because he's got a ton, and he's in this area. I know we're getting close to wrapping up, but just, a lot of really interesting examples of the stuff that Tommy does where there's an implication between a criminal and civil case. Yeah,
real quick, final thought from you, Tommy?
The main thing is, if anybody out there has been involved in a criminal situation where they've been a victim, or they have a family member that's been a victim, they should go talk to a lawyer, because there can oftentimes be a money case for them where we could file suit in civil court to obtain money damages for them. People don't think about that, but they should.
1 minute left.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, at the end of the day, the goal here is to we're trying to get folks to lawyers that can help in circumstances. If somebody's been a victim, we may not be able to help you at our firm at Hollis Wright, but we've got guys like Tommy that can help you. Get to us, we'll get you to him if you've got these issues. And we hope nobody goes through this, but if they do, they need to know there's help out there, at least somebody that can evaluate and consider those cases.
Well, good deal. Tommy, thanks for being with us.
Good job.
Yes, sir.
Good
Thanks
job.
for having
Appreciate
me.
you being with us. Appreciate you joining us as well. As we wrap things up, here's how you can get in touch with the firm of Hollis Wright, available 24/7 here on the website there, so check them out there. Thanks so much for being with us. We'll see you next time on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.